a 7-year-old girl, the only person who could bring peace to two kingdoms, but then she vanished during a voyage across the sea. No body was found. No one dared to speak. And from Margaret's death came a brutal war that would last for decades. But the most chilling part of all, it's hidden in the final detail of this story, a truth, buried for 700 years, about who she really was. In the year 1286, King Alexander III of Scotland fell from his horse during a stormy night and died suddenly. He left no queen, no surviving sons, no clear heir. His death plunged Scotland into panic and uncertainty. But there was one last hope, a child only 3 years old. Margaret of Norway, the king's granddaughter. She became the only legitimate heir to the Scottish throne, and people began calling her the Maid of Norway. A royal pact of peace to prevent bloodshed. A brilliant political plan was formed. Margaret would marry Edward of Carnarvon, son of King Edward I of England. This marriage was meant to unite the two crowns and bring peace between the long-warring nations of England and Scotland. All that remained was to bring little Margaret safely to her future kingdom. The voyage and the vanishing in 1290. At just 7 years old, Margaret boarded a ship in Bergen, Norway, bound for Scotland. With her was a trusted group of nobles, priests, and attendants from both nations. But the ship never reached its destination. Official records claim that Margaret died suddenly on the Orkney Islands, a remote outpost in the far north of Scotland, supposedly from illness at sea. Witnesses said she began to vomit uncontrollably, grew weak, and then collapsed after the ship stopped at a small fishing village. The strange inconsistencies: no one outside the royal entourage ever saw Margaret's body. There was no public funeral, no burial in any royal crypt, no preserved medical record. All that exists is a brief letter from a single English nobleman stating, "Margaret has passed away, due to reasons beyond prevention." Immediately afterward, King Edward I of England ordered all Scottish castles and strongholds to be placed under his control, claiming the royal marriage was null because the bride was dead. Scotland fell into chaos. Margaret's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was the trigger for a national disaster. With no clear successor, 30 powerful clans began to fight for the throne. The royal bloodline was shattered. The country teetered on the edge of civil war. In the shadows of this confusion, Edward I invaded Scotland, starting a war that would last for generations, bloody, ruthless, and unforgettable. This was the beginning of the Wars of Scottish Independence, the same war that would give rise to legendary names like William Wallace. But what, was Margaret really dead? Just a few years later, a woman appeared in Germany, claiming to be the real Margaret. She said she had been kidnapped during the voyage, replaced with a decoy child, and hidden away so Edward could seize Scotland for himself. The woman was arrested, tortured, and ultimately burned alive in Lübeck, Germany, in 1301. Yet, some witnesses who had seen young Margaret claimed they recognized her face and mannerisms in the woman who died. The woman who claimed to be Margaret burned as an impostor was known in history as False Margaret. But even centuries later, historians can't agree on one question. Was she really false? Because the facts surrounding Margaret's official death don't line up. The island of Orkney, where she supposedly died, was a bleak, remote outpost, not a place fit for a royal heir to disembark. Why had the ship stopped there, instead of continuing to Scotland's mainland, where nobles and physicians awaited her? There was no formal record of her burial, no state funeral, no tomb, only vague letters, carefully worded, announcing she had died of an illness. Even stranger, no family member from the Norwegian court ever saw her body. So why such secrecy? A plot written in silence. Let's look at who stood to gain the most from her death. King Edward I of England, known as the Hammer of the Scots, was a ruthless strategist. He had already begun extending his power northward. If Margaret married a son, he could gain control through peace. But if she died, he could take Scotland by force. After her death, Edward summoned all the Scottish claimants to the throne and appointed himself as the overlord of Scotland, a move that caused outrage among the Scots. Some believe Edward had agents aboard that ship, or at the very least, orchestrated the circumstances to ensure Margaret never made it to Scotland alive. A war, born from the silence of a child's death. After Margaret's passing, Scotland arrived. The noble families tore the land apart in a power struggle. The nation became fractured, vulnerable. In 1296, Edward launched a full-scale invasion of Scotland. His armies razed cities, desecrated churches, and captured the Stone of Scone, the sacred coronation stone of Scottish kings, bringing it back to England as a trophy. For the next 60 years, Scotland bled. What could have been a peaceful union through a royal marriage became a chain of violence and rebellion. William Wallace's uprising, Robert the Bruce's excommunication and eventual coronation, and the rise of a fiercely independent Scottish identity forged in war. All of it, because the little girl never arrived. Whispers of a surviving queen. Even today, some believe Margaret survived. There are accounts of a cloister in northern Germany where a foreign noblewoman lived in secrecy for years, fluent in Norse, Scottish, Gaelic, and Latin. Her writings contain detailed knowledge of Scottish royal courts, knowledge she should not have had. Some even believe the woman burned in Lubeck wasn't executed for imposture, but to silence the truth. After all, if Margaret was still alive, every treaty signed after her death would become invalid. So, what really happened to Princess Margaret? Was it an unfortunate death of a seasick child? Was it an assassination ordered by a king who needed her gone? Or was it an act of betrayal, hidden behind ceremony, carried out by those sworn to protect her? My verdict, if you ask me, the disappearance of Princess Margaret wasn't an accident, it was a calculated removal. The chaos that followed benefited England too neatly. The silence of the Norwegian court, the absence of a body, the quick grasp for power, they all point to one truth. Someone wanted her gone. And not just gone, but history doesn't forget, so easily. Because in every blood-soaked battlefield, in every rebel's cry for freedom, echoes the silence of a little girl lost at Margaret, the queen who never ruled. If you found this story haunting, don't forget to subscribe for more real historical mysteries that were buried, but never truly dead.